It's good to see your smiling faces. There you go, Dylan. Good job. Welcome to City Council meeting this evening, December 9th of 2025. I believe our last council meeting in this year. So we welcome you and appreciate you joining us this evening. We have Council Member Severing with us this evening. He's going to start our meeting off with either a thought, an invocation, and then he will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, after which we'll go into our agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Heavenly Father, this night we come before Thee and we give thanks to Thee for the many, many blessings that we have. We're grateful to live in this incredible city with so many wonderful, wonderful people. And our prayer tonight is for them. May the citizens be blessed with health and strength, and may those who might be suffering at this difficult time, may they feel Thy spirit of love and comfort. We give thanks for the citizens who work so hard to make the city a great place, and for the staff as well. And we pray for their safety and ask Thee that this community might always be a favorable place. Pray that decisions rendered tonight would be appropriate to Thy will, and know how, again, grateful we are for our abundance. And we pray for this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilmember Severing. I would like to excuse Councilmember Barker this evening. He is at a new elected mayor's meeting with the other elected mayors in the county. So we excuse him this evening. We'll now start our meeting with a presentation from Lieutenant Ryan Long on traffic enforcement. We've asked him to make this presentation based upon feedback from our citizens regarding speeding problems and stop sign violations. So we've asked him to put together a plan to help us get in compliance more. Thank you, Lieutenant Long.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for having me here, council members, to talk about the issue. I shouldn't take more than 30 or 40 minutes of your time. Actually, if I talk really fast, maybe only 6 or 7 minutes. So when I started in July, the mayor did convey to me some of the concerns that residents were having about speeding and stop sign violations. I am a North Ogden resident. I live on a corner lot that's controlled by a stop sign in one direction. And in previous years, I would, in fact, take the opportunity to take my Ogden police car and, rather than park it in my driveway, park it on the street on the approach to the stop sign. And that was usually worth an evening's entertainment for my wife and I as we watched drivers react to the police car they weren't expecting to find there. So I understand, and I've seen a number. And since coming here, I have had the opportunity to meet a number of our residents at that particular intersection. When we look at the speeding and the intersection violations, and I'm going to refer kind of intersection violations because it's stop sign, red light, it could be any number of encroachments. We don't have a technology that allows us to monitor intersection violations when it comes to stop signs. However, with UDOT signalized intersections, we do. That's after the fact, and that's when we rely upon sensor data provided by the UDOT traffic sensors. So we had to base our enforcement model on essentially just officer observations. And when it came to speed, similar, we do have 6 fixed traffic radar displays around town and a mobile trailer that help us. So we either have to rely on officers just running radar and LiDAR or getting complaints from the residents trying to tell us where it is we're going to have this upcoming emphasis. So the data analysis was important. So one of the things I wanted to do to add to where we would be able to spend a lot of time with officer interactions, we tried to look at where were we having crashes. Ultimately, the emphasis and importance of traffic safety is trying to prevent collisions. That's where we see the end result of the traffic violations. So this map is not a heat map. It's not going to show you how many crashes we were seeing at particular intersections. We had 149 crashes in North Ogden City between January and July. And 40 or more of those we were able to pinpoint as being specific to intersections. This map doesn't include intersections we're going to find mid-block or say parking lots at like Smith's. But this gives us a pretty good indication of where I could have officers start focusing our traffic enforcement. The other analysis piece that I referenced is the fixed traffic displays that we have. We found pretty consistent results over those 6 platforms. Now, those 6 displays are designed to tell drivers how fast they're going in order to get voluntary compliance. That's ultimately our goal. We want drivers to comply with the law without us having to look over their shoulders. Sometimes we need to be there to be a reminder, and that was what we did in August. What we did find over the data from these particular platforms was that more than 96% of our drivers were under 5 miles an hour over the speed limit pretty consistently, and over 98% of them were under 10 over. We found that about 1.5% exceeded 10 miles an hour over the speed limit on our roadways, and that's a pretty small number, fortunately. From my perspective, that's a little bit too small for me to focus specific enforcement efforts by deploying officers to those areas at times and days, because it wouldn't have been a real useful allocation of our resources. So this is going to be a depiction of where we made our traffic stops, and it will, if you overlaid that particular map on top of where we were having crashes, it's going to cover it. Using July as a benchmark, July is 100% of our traffic stops. You'll find that in August, our traffic stops went up by more than 40%, and they stayed up through September and have even gone up 50% from July in October. So August was the time that our patrol officers were provided with some direction and guidance of this is a priority. I want you to take some time when you have free time and do traffic enforcement. And that's what we started in August. This is a reflection of citations. Now, don't panic. Yep, citations look like they went up more than 150%. That's not necessarily infractions. That not all of those citations cost somebody money. From our standpoint in record keeping, a citation is a written document. So it's either a written warning or a citation. That's both. So what went up over the course of our emphasis in August is officers documenting the violation. One of the things I found over my career in the traffic context was if you give somebody a piece of paper, it tends to have more impact than just wagging your finger at them. So I did not pull the data on, it's a little more difficult for me to pull the data on whether those violations broke down into percentages for tickets versus warnings. What we know is that a lot more drivers were handed a piece of paper that said, please slow down or stop at stop signs. So what effect did this have on us? There are a variety of ways to look at impacts, right? A driver who's written a ticket tends to not do that particular violation again, if only because of the cumulative effects of getting tickets. But witness drivers don't know the difference. Witness drivers, if they see somebody pulled over, they don't know whether somebody's getting a ticket or not getting a ticket. They just know that the police department's doing its job. So this isn't about that, a couple different studies on the effectiveness of that. But what you'll look at on the graph is collisions 24 and 2025. And you'll see that during the month of August, when we were doing our large focus on traffic enforcement, we did in fact drop collisions by a pretty significant number. When we stopped doing it, inexplicably, as statistics go, we did see a short spike, but they're now trending down again. And if you'll remember the graph from the stops, our traffic stops are still going up. Officers have reverted back to kind of giving people more verbal warnings, and we haven't been making that as much of a priority due to issues we've been having in the parks training requirements, vacations, things. I haven't been asking the officers to make that as much of a priority as we did specifically in August. But the good news is crashes are down. So what are we going to do? We're going to continue to prioritize enforcement for speed and stop sign violations as officers see them. We'll do additional emphasis patrols through the holidays related to just not only distracted driving, but DUIs. We're going to train additional officers in how to use the UDOT sensor data, which can also hold people accountable when we can show that there was a red light violation. I would also like we're going to look at acquiring more moving radars for our patrol vehicles. If you look back at that 1.5% of cars that are going more than 10 over, it's not as easy for an officer just to pull over on the side of the road and use a handheld radar to wait for somebody to come by at a speed that is worth pulling somebody over for. If we have the moving radar in the car, it means while they're driving around with the radar on and somebody happens by them at that speed, then they can take the opportunity to pull the person over for that.
Quick question.
What's
If
the way?
you're saying acquire more, how many of the vehicles are currently equipped with the moving radar?
I think it's 2.
Okay.
So not many. I also like to work with IT and see whether there's a way for us to solicit community input for where they're seeing traffic-related problems. A web form submission that can allow people to tell us that allow us to focus our efforts a little more. We do have a mobile trailer speed device, which we can usually use. We usually put it in neighborhoods when people call and complain. We would like to be able to use that more effectively in areas where people can tell us they're having problems, as opposed to us just picking a random place. So that will be useful. There is a private company called Collision Cam, which will come put cameras on private property in intersections where we have collisions. They will give us the ability to log in and look at footage, and they do it on their own. They sell their footage. They work with insurance companies. It's just a free benefit to us. And they'll be in our area next month to talk about with business owners about putting some cameras up. There have been some stories in local media about that. And it's not a Big Brother thing. It's nothing that we have to do with, other than this company would allow us to look at footage if there's a crash and help us determine whether, for example, a red light violation or a right-of-way violation was to blame. That's all I had.
Council, what questions do you have for Lieutenant Long while he's here? Any? Councilmember Pulver?
So is there another next focus on like sidewalks or school zones, or is that always a focus, I guess?
Well, school zones are always a focus. One of the things that you saw with the increase in citations in August included the beginning of the school year. If off the top of my head, of the citations that were issued, more than 50% were speed related, and I think it was about 5% that we were able to attribute to intersections. Right now, that's just because the officer has to see the stop sign or the red light violation to enforce it. When we were working school zones, it's easier for us to stop and watch a school zone at a given time. So a number of the contacts were specific to that. Traffic enforcement's always a priority. What we choose to do with that, say, for example, November is roadway responder safety month. And so we had conducted some move over, slow down enforcement in the month of November.
Councilmember Dalpaz.
Since you mentioned that it's a goal to get more moving radar, do you know what the approximate cost is to equip a patrol vehicle with that?
No, I haven't acquired that yet.
Oh, I see a raised hand in the back of the room. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, I'll repeat that. Chief Einan said that it's about $6,000 to equip a vehicle with that.
Okay.
Any
Thank-
grants that you've heard of that would cover that?
There are a number of them.
Any other questions? Councilmember Watson?
So you appreciate when citizens tell you of certain areas that are concerning to them. And is there a certain route that they should direct those just to the non-emergent number, or is there a better way?
Well, I think right now, I would direct people to our generic email address, which is just police@northogdencity.gov. I would like to have something a little more focused, which is why I mentioned maybe working with IT on our website of being able to generate a web form where people can just drop in the information, and I think that would make it a little easier for us to keep track of statistical information as well.
That's great. Thank you.
If I heard you correctly, Lieutenant, the very low percentage of speeders was in areas where we had the sign that flashes that tells you how. That is very effective because it's a reminder, because I think a lot of people just get going and don't pay attention. So, that may be an option on different spots, but just a couple things that I do want to emphasize is there were no quotas assigned. Just a reminder, it's not a real revenue generator for the city because most of the fine money goes to the state. And second of all, and I appreciate this, the way the force handled this, is we asked for education. And I know that, that was an important part. When people were pulled over, unless they were just ridiculously out of thing, it was more of an education of, hey, this is an emphasis, just want to give you a heads up. Which I think is important. And we're glad that you and the chief are here. I believe you had extensive traffic experience at Ogden City. And in no way being negative, but I think when our police force was down, we couldn't find officers. Traffic enforcement kind of fell to the bottom of the list. But now that we're pretty much up to speed, we really appreciate what you two are doing to reinstigate, traffic enforcement in our city. Because the last thing we want is to have one of those crashes turn fatal, right?
Correct.
Avoidance is better. So we really appreciate you and your officers, and a great report. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councilmember Pulver?
I've had a few complaints that the sign, when you're going exactly 30, it still flashes, and that really annoys some people. And I'm like, okay, but so it's on the record now. So
Just a
Like to-
reminder,
I'd like to remind people that 30 is the limit,
Mhm.
right? So flashing is the reminder of you're about to be going too fast. And that's when we talk about voluntary compliance. I think that's the reason for the programming, though, is going exactly 30. You're skirting with.
somebody.
Can we put a big smiley face on the sign if they're complying or something of that
Nope.
nature?
The
Maybe
new
get
sign
IT,
displays-
look into that.
The new sign displays will actually do that if you want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right. A little smiley
I've seen
face.
signs that have sirens if you're over 30.
Wow, well, that's a little extensive. Anyway, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
great work and your great report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now go on to our consent agenda. Once again, thanks to our recording group. The agenda was out on Thursday. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it. In doing so, is there any potential conflicts of interest you'd like to discuss at this point in time? I'm going to get like the flight attendants and ask for verbal commitments here pretty soon. I guess I won't pretty soon. Okay, we're going to now talk about the city council minutes of the November 18th and the 21st. Once again, on a very timely point, the recorder's office has got those minutes to us. If you've had a chance to review those and submit any corrections, if there are any further, I'd entertain that now. If not, I'd look for a motion to approve those reference minutes of the 18th and the 21st of November, 2025. Do we have a motion?
So moves.
Thank you, Councilmember Pulver. We have a
Second.
Second by Councilmember Watson. Any further questions or discussion? There being none, I would ask for a voice vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Are there any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. We're now going to hear from our Public Works Inspector, Mr. Dylan Hill. He's going to talk to us about a conditional acceptance of subdivision improvements at the Mountain Grove Estates.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for letting me present tonight. I have completed the conditional inspection on Mountain Grove Estates. This is a 3-lot subdivision where an existing home was on 2600 North and Mountain Road. It was from March 2025. The improvements include curb and gutter, sidewalk, 2 connections to the sewer main, and 2 new water services. And then they ended up paving about 15 feet of new roadway on Mountain Road. All the improvements are up to the city code and standards. After conditional acceptance is approved, the 1-year warranty period will start, and another inspection for final will be done before that is granted. So it is the recommendation to conditionally accept the improvements.
Okay, any questions for Dylan? Councilmember Pulver?
One just popped in my head. Was there sidewalk or no sidewalk on that?
There is sidewalk on one side of the road right in front of those, and it extends down to, there was approximately like 15 feet that it makes a connection there.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to remember. Yep.
No ADA ramp, so
Correct.
they didn't go to the intersection, so.
Okay, any other questions? I would then look for a motion to approve the conditional acceptance as recommended by Dylan for the Mountain Grove Estates subdivision. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve the conditional acceptance of the subdivision improvements at Mountain Grove Estates.
I second that. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Councilmember Dalpaz. And we have a second by Councilmember Severing. Any questions for Dylan or further discussion? All right, we'll take a voice vote on that recommendation from Mr. Hill. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Looks like the motion passes unanimously. Thanks again, Dylan, for joining us this evening. Now enter into our active agenda. Now is the time for public comments. If anyone would like to comment. And John, if you would watch online for any attendees there. If you'd like to comment, please raise your hand. If you're here in person and would like to comment, please come up to the podium, state your name. If you're a resident of North Ogden, and please limit your comment to no longer than 5 minutes. Anyone online, John?
Nope.
All right, we'll continue on with our agenda. And this will be a presentation by Mr. Scott Hess, who's with us this evening, who's our Community and Economic Development Director. He's going to talk to us about amending ordinance code 11-7 and 11-14. This is regarding the cottage kitchens issue that was addressed by the council some time ago. Scott?
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight's ordinance update is a recommendation to allow Utah permitted cottage food production as home-based businesses in North Ogden. The change aligns our regulations with state law, preserves neighborhood compatibility, and supports small-scale entrepreneurs under the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food Safety standards. Staff is recommending approval. The Planning Commission met on November 5th and held a public hearing. Sharissa Kessinger, who's represented the item in front of the City Council, which spurred the City Council to ask staff to make this amendment, was there, made comments, and she's unfortunately unable to make it tonight, but was in support of the application. Planning Commission, after discussion, unanimously voted to recommend approval of the ordinance. The ordinance is a pretty simple change here. It adds a definition of cottage food production as indicated in state code. It lists it under the permitted home occupations as regulated by Utah State Code and the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, and then is added to the development standards of all home occupations. And again, as regulated by Utah State Code and Utah Department of Agriculture and Food regulations. The home occupation standards as we have limit the number of trucks and deliveries and people who can come to a home at any one time, depending on the home occupation use. We don't foresee this as being a massive impact to local neighborhoods. And as long as they can follow all those other codes and restrictions and health standards, the city is okay with that and would be willing to issue business licenses should the city council amend the ordinance. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Pulver?
Just something that hit my head was, does this require any additional inspections that the city has to do, or is it just?
We typically, with home occupations, anything related to food, will go out and make sure that there's fire extinguishers on site, you have GFCIs in the kitchens, and kind of do just a basic inspection, but typically not with this one. It's not like a food truck or a big food cart where you have to have commercial grade equipment. That's part of the Utah State Code. So this is home kitchens preparing foods that would be shelf stable in their own home and then sold or, given away essentially.
So basically is it Weber County Health?
Weber County Health Department will go
Okay.
out. Yep.
Okay.
Councilmember Delpez?
I'm very supportive of this. Is there there are people that are probably out of compliance with this as you go around and you see people selling stuff out of their homes. Is there any plans to approach individuals that are known to be selling food items out of their house and tell them that this is an option to go through all these steps and get in compliance? Or what are your thoughts?
I think we should promote it on the city's social media and see if we can drive compliance that way. That's similar to the accessory dwelling units when those were made legal by Utah State Code. We had a bunch of them that were illegal and we created a pathway for them to come into compliance. But we are responsive code enforcement, so that would require somebody to call and have a concern about what their neighbor's doing in their home.
Okay.
Scott, just one question. It is a little bit more complex. I think that's kind of why the city had avoided this for a number of years.
Yep.
With its complexity and with Councilmember Dalpaz's comment, is there an educational process? I'd hate for these folks to go through all this and then not understand what they're subject to in regards to the city ordinance and the state is there. If we get a number of people coming in, is there an educational process so they understand this? It's a little complex.
Our business license department and business license officials really good about forwarding on those requirements. So we won't issue the business license until all of these other Utah State codes, local health department, USDA requirements are met. So my guess is that Ms. Phillips would issue that information out as part of the request for the business license. So we're maybe the first touch point, and then the bounce back is, have you considered or are you compliant in all of these other ways? And we'll see how many people take it up. So we're offering it as a amendment or a possibility for people, and then it's up to them to do it in compliance.
Okay, thank you. All right, any questions for Scott? I don't see any. This will be a roll call vote tonight. I'd like to go in this order. There's several roll calls. We'll start with Councilmember Watson, go to Councilmember Severing, go down to Councilmember Pulver, and then we'll end with Councilmember Dalpaz. So I'd be looking for a motion to adopt ordinance 2025-23. That ordinance would amend the North Ogden City Code as explained by Scott, which is 11-7 and 11-14. And that defines the cottage kitchen regulations and ordinance. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Severing?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I move that we approve ordinance 2025-2023. Let me say that again, ordinance 2025-23, amending North Ogden City Code 11-7 and 11-14 to define, permit, and regulate cottage kitchens.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Pulver has seconded that motion. Any further discussions, questions, issues? Councilmember Watson?
I just thought of one question, and maybe it was in the pack and I forget, but is there a fee attached to applying for this permit?
So Home occupations under state code. We don't regulate occupations unless there's an increased burden on the city. So more than likely, no, but we'll double check that there's not a burden for inspections or things like Scott was talking about.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
I just want to thank Sharisa for going through all the work to get this going, because as it was mentioned at the first city council meeting that she came to, it was her that had to really shepherd the process if she wanted it done. So I really respect that she went to all the work to get this done.
Thank you, Councilmember Dalpaz.
Mayor,
Councilmember Severing.
I just wanted to mention that I think this is a really, really good thing. You know, in my line of work, when you see so many people struggling to make mortgage payments and just survive, I think some of these cottage kitchens may be doing that and helping families. So I'm in support.
Okay, well, with that then, let's have a roll call vote. Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulver,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalpaz.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously. We'll now go on to item 7 on our agenda. This will be led by Mr. John Call, and this is regarding Resolution 12-2025. And this is in regards to the use of park impact fee funds for the development of future parks, with focus on the development of Barker Park. I had a little conversation with Mr. Call before the meeting, but let's hear what John has to say and what your comments may be. Mr. Call.
Thank you, Mayor. So council, what we've done is presented a resolution which helps to outline the future use of impact fees or park impact fees specifically. In the conversation the mayor and I had before, there was a discussion about potentially, instead of saying it has to be 80%, allowing the council say up to 80%, because there may be a scenario where 80% isn't needed at the time that year for Barker Park funding. And then I added a little provision at the end of the sentence that says, hey, if the council's already made a decision on how impact fees would be spent, then they wouldn't be stuck to the 80%. A good example is with the West States project down just off of Washington and 1700. The council has committed to reimbursing an amount for that public park that's going to be put in by the developer down there with impact fees. And so obviously we wouldn't be using those 80%, but it is tied specifically to development agreements for specific uses generated by a project. And so I think that narrows that down to it will be the exception, not the rule. But this essentially says 80% or up to 80% will be used for Barker Park, and then 20% of impact fees will be used to secure future acreage for other parks. And that would allow the city to continue to plan for the future while still finishing Barker Park. And if you remember from the conversation we had back in August, the timeline is kind of is the track for the timeline right now is to have Barker Park completed in the next 10 years. And that seems like a long ways. We've been working on it for 25 years already. And I think that this at least gives us a manageable way with the impact fees that are coming in. Hopefully some private donations will come in to speed that up, and some ramp funding as well. But I think having 10 years is like the final handle on the toilet will go on, or whatever you want to think of it. It'll be done in 10 years is the goal for the city. So I'm just trying to think of the last fixture you would in a handle on a toilet to flush out
Got
of.
it. Got it, John. We got that there. I think the purpose of this, and this is estimates, John in his report talked about the estimated amount of impact fees that would be collected in a given year. John, just as a reminder, when we budgeted for the amount to go into capital projects, as you'll recall, there was a 10% amount set aside for parks, I believe, at that that point, or I can't believe it was 20. Remember, we talked about 10% for maintenance of facilities, maybe it was 20% for parks. Does this supersede that, or do you
Uh,
recall how we,
Yeah, so since these are two separate funds, so park impact fees can only be spent on new stuff. The capital improvement funds, the idea is that 80% was or 70% was being saved for future needs, which could include parks. So the city could inject money into parks. 20% was for park equipment replacement, and then 10% was for maintenance of existing city infrastructure, specifically buildings and park facilities. And so the mayor's right that this is this is a different pot of money, although the capital improvement money could be used to supplement the Barker Park development, for example, because the city does have the ability to prepay for items to be constructed, and then impact fees will be reimburse us in the future. But if we do that, we want to make it very clear and pretty much create what's called an interfund loan. So it's very clear how much the general fund capital improvement fund is owed by the park impact fee to reimburse.
or they could just use it and waive it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And I would suggest to the council that the funds that John just referenced, the 70, 20, 10, that those funds be identified as either restricted or assigned so they don't get lost in the shuffle of things, because the council was very, I think, focused on the fact that we need to make sure we're setting aside money for future parks and maintenance of current parks so that we don't get in the problem we had before. So just a suggestion, that's up to you, but sometimes when it gets just in the capital improvements fund or even in fund balance, it gets kind of lost. Any questions for Mr. Call on this? Yes, Mr. Pulver?
Not so much or a question, but more of a comment. I guess people say 10 years, that's, but I think the thing we have to also budget for is the fact that that's going to take a lot more to maintain as opposed to having fields and woods that you don't maintain. And I think we did a walkthrough of when we were doing Bill Barker Park stuff, and Dave said some crazy number of employees that we'd have to add to maintain all of it. And I'm like, whoa. So that's another thing that we need to start thinking about too, is how do we start slowly integrating that? Because we need to know, or at least plan for it, if nothing else. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I think those two adjustments that we talked about are important, up to 80%. And if it can be superseded by a development agreement, similar to what John talked at there. But I think the key is getting moving on the park after all these years and having the council committed to doing it, which I see heads shaking. No verbal yet, but head shaking. We'll go with that.
Yes.
Verbal.
Yeah, I think the council is supportive of that. So any other questions for Mr. Call? Any unintended consequences that anybody can think of?
It's the only thing is if
Councilmember Dalpaz, go ahead.
if there's a need in another park, I think that's partly addressed. It's if something major came up in another park where we needed to focus the funds, we could always come back and change the ordinance. But I think this is the right intention and the right direction to go. I don't see any reason why it won't work out in the next few years, the 80-20, but yeah, seems pretty good.
Okay. Councilmember Pulver?
There is that other park too, the Hill Park or whatever we want to call it, that we got to
Yeah.
do in, is it 5 years? Or 10 or something?
10, I think.
10? 10's better. So to figure that out so that the county doesn't
Yeah.
absorb it back.
And that's, I had a discussion with Councilmember Barker prior to the meeting when he called to kind of express where he was on the situation. And, if you look at the general plan, there's only several areas for potential parks that have been identified. And those would probably be handled through development agreements, the size of the projects. So it does give you some leeway anyway going forward, which I think is important because you just never know. Okay. Any other questions, comments? If there are none, I would look for a motion to adopt Resolution 12-25, outlining the use of park impact fees for the development of future parks, and including the development of Barker Park. So if there are no further questions, I would look for a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 12-2025, outlining the use of park impact fees funds for the development of future parks, including development of Barker Park.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Watson. Do we have a second to her motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Pulver. Once again, any further discussion before we seek a roll call vote? Seeing none, we'll go with Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulver,
Yes.
and Councilmember Dalpaz.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll go on with item number 8 on our agenda this evening, which is Resolution 13-2025. And this is regarding sales tax incentives used to pay impact fees. This was a discussion that's, I think, taken place over the last couple of meetings, including the work session. So, Mr. Call, would you like to lead that discussion?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So, Council, as you remember, under Utah law, the state has eliminated several provisions which would allow for cities to use money to incentivize businesses to come in. However, they do allow it when the money that's incentivizing the group to come in is actually public infrastructure. So one of those areas that would qualify would be impact fee dollars that commercial development's required to pay. In the conversations we've had the last couple of meetings, we talked about a range of potential use of sales tax increment from 20 to 50% a year to go towards impact fee credits, or essentially to just pay the impact fee funds out of the general fund, understanding that the city would, because of the new businesses, see an increase in sales tax dollars over those 5 years and beyond. And so one of the ways to accomplish that was to create a policy or a resolution. So we put this together that basically says that the city could give, this says 50% of the sales tax increment to a new or expanding business to be used for impact fees. And that would be accomplished by just a transfer within the city between our funds. And then I gave some definitions because this seems like a little more formal document with kind of a policy and some procedures that we would be following. The hard part about it is really comes down to, with the discussion tonight, is the council deciding does this resolution provide enough direction that council feels comfortable handing it off to staff to essentially publish to individuals who are looking at bringing businesses into the city? And then most importantly, what are the numbers the council wants to look at seriously? A good example is, I don't think we should give up 100% of our sales tax increment, because what's the benefit there? That's why we've always talked about a number less than that, because the city would essentially be taking a risk that they were going to bring in that much money over the next 5 years. And if they don't, then the development would be in the hole. And then another good question that came out of the mayor and my conversation is, do we want to allow for this increment and incentive to cover 100% of impact fees? Or do we still want the development to bring some skin to the game as far as impact fees and maybe cap the amount of qualifying dollars to a number less than 100%? Right now, it says the incentive shall not exceed 100% of the impact fees. One thing that is helpful to understand is commercial development does not pay park impact fees. So they do not pay for the Barker Park stuff that we were just talking about, but they do pay public safety, water, culinary water, stormwater, sewer, and then there's two outside fees, one with Central Weber Sewer and one with Northview Fire. And it may be good to clarify if we're talking about all impact fees or just city impact fees in this conversation as well, so that a developer couldn't make the argument that the policy said, hey, it includes Central Weber and that the city would pay the Central Weber fee as well. So I did add a provision down here in the administration that says that the city staff will go out and try and verify the information, but then we'll provide a report to the council on what those projections were and the data relied upon. With that information, there may be some proprietary information we can't share. So let's say the example I used last time was Costco. They might not want their competitor Sam's Club to know how much every one of their stores is bringing in. And so they might say, hey, in these 5 locations, these were the average sales tax generated, without specifically saying, hey, it was the one here on Redwood Road and this one in St. George, just to help with a little bit of them being able to keep their competitive advantage in those locations.
John, certain cities, I think there's 5 in Weber County, they can kind of break it down into, I'm not sure how specific it is, but they can look at it and say, here's how much the grocery stores are contributing. Here's how much the C stores are contributing. But I think it would be important, and it needs to be kept confidential. But we talked about that report of them providing to the council or to staff, whatever is the confidentiality clause, is that they would supply, here's the sales tax they had. Of course, a new business comes in, right? That's not an issue.
Right.
But if an existing business says they're going to increase their sales from 250 to 500, they should be able to provide their specific sales tax report they submitted previously and any they're submitting currently. And that's kind of a way the council or the staff could document that 50%. I agree, as we had in our discussion. I'm not sure 100% of the impact fees should be returned, that they do need to have some skin in the game, so that it would probably be limited, shall not exceed 50% of the impact fees assessed. And I think it'd be good to clarify, John, that the payment will be made after submission of the required documents. They may read that and say, oh, here's my projection, give me my money, and then it's hard to get money back, right? So it
Yeah.
would seem like that payment ought to be, after the respective evidence is submitted. And it would just be on the city's portion, right?
Correct.
And
Yeah.
we need to clarify that, because there's, they're collecting, say, 7.25% sales tax, and we're getting 1. So do we need to clarify that the credit is only based upon the sales tax receipt by the city? For instance, if the state changed that and reduced it or increased it. So I'm just wondering if you think, well, that ought to be specified on what sales tax is going to be credited.
I think that's a good idea because as many of you know, or as you all know, the 1% of our sales tax goes into the local fund, and half of that, so 0.5%, goes directly to the city where the sale is made, and the other 0.5% goes into the state pool that then gets shared by population. And so I think the mayor makes a good point that we should be probably talking about that 0.5% that we know is dedicated to us. And then I think with your other comment, Mayor, I can do a little research. I think there may be a way for us to get better information from the state than we've typically had in the past. Although I think anyone who gets that information has to sign their name in blood on the
Mhm.
saying they will not share it. So I'll see if we have the ability to do that.
And they have to file a report with the state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the evidence that would be pretty important
Yeah.
to get. But I don't know, it's up to the council, but returning 100% because there will be some impact. The reason we're looking at this is to try to be competitive, and we'd be ultra competitive at 0% if they do the whole impact fee, but it's up to the council. Any questions for Mr. Call, Mr. Dalpaz?
It's a new business, seems really cut and dry, very easy to track and understand. It seems like the expansion of an existing business is kind of seems a little trickier to implement and to put into place. I'm supportive of that, of course, but I'm having a harder time I understanding how we would be able to tell that the expansion is going to provide more sales tax revenues, which clearly it will in the case of a retail store or something, but I'm just having a hard time
Well, wouldn't you do
understand
that by getting their previous reports?
so that's what you were referring
Yeah,
to.
that they would have to supply their previous reports for the previous year. And then that would be compared to the reports they're filing after their expansion or whatever. So that way you could literally see what the increment is.
Okay, and that's what you were referring to of the people that have to sign a confidentiality
Yeah, they
something
provide the-
somewhere.
Yes, that's, mhm. And that
Okay.
might be good point by Councilmember Dalpaz. That might be good to define what the documentation is they have to provide the last previous 12 months and then the current. Is that a bad idea, John?
I don't envy you to format this in the middle of the meeting in front of all of us.
Just wish that it would.
Just hit tab. Do that.
I couldn't tell if you thought it was a bad idea or you were frustrated with your computer, John.
I'm frustrated with my computer.
Okay.
So, but the nice thing is that there are others who are better at Word than I am who can fix the issue. That
Uh,
we'll fix the spacing, assuming. And one thing, council, it is helpful to have this information and better understand if this is the way you're thinking or if you think this would be a good resolution to adopt. But if there are concerns and things we need to tweak, then let's tweak it. I don't want to pass something that isn't that doesn't meet your goals.
I had a dumb little grammar comment at the bottom. D, section D of 5, upon is just one
Oh.
word. And then Mayor, you were suggesting something lower than 100% of the impact fees. You were in the 50% or so range is your
It's kind of a
guess?
shared arrangement, 50-50. I mean, it puts us in a competitive situation.
I think it depends. And that's why I would say up to, if that's, I don't know what it says. Because that way, because if it's something that we can't lose, if that makes sense, then I don't want to lose. I don't care how much, I mean, it would, if it's detrimental to the city health, pay 100%. I mean, to me, that's worth more. I mean, it's going to depend on the business and people are like, oh, you're preferential on certain things. Well, come to city council, come to the budget committee meeting and you'll see why.
You know, and I think
I
we
think-
talked about that, having maybe a schedule that says if you generate this much sales tax, you fit into this category instead of waiting and specifically, you know, because then you start getting into this,
Preferential, yeah.
yeah,
And
pick
that's
and choose. But if you have a thing in there that says,
significant
hey,
impact, yeah.
if you're generating this much in sales tax, which whatever that definition is, then you're subject to this. But at a minimum, it probably ought to be 50. But it would be good, and maybe that's something you defer to determine what that threshold is of how much they're generating of sales tax. And then they just fit into the schedule, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Councilmember Dalpass?
Yeah, I really like that idea to have it, because I'm worried that if we say up to 100%, years down the road, a council that isn't this council kind of plays around with it and misinterprets it, and then everyone starts getting that 100%. So I like the idea to have actual brackets of, if you're X amount of revenue per year in sales tax, you're eligible for this. If you're Y amount, you're eligible for that.
And would this be retro to the businesses that are coming in, John, or how does that work?
So it would be up to the council. I know that some of the businesses that are coming in right now are stretching a little bit. In particular, there's with commercials, there's the shell that costs money to build. There's the tenant improvements that cost money to build. And then the majority of the businesses we've seen so far are some sort of a franchise. And so those operators are going to be paying some money to the franchise. And I mean, just from what I've seen in the rates lately, they're pretty expensive per square foot what they're paying. And so if the council would like to, we could approach those that are in that process of coming in within a certain range and finding a way to help ease the burden they've been facing.
It just seems weird that, for instance, you have Mobetta's, which is going to open on December 15th, right? Then 3 weeks later, another business directly in the same area would be subject to it. It seems like maybe putting an effective date to be equitable makes sense.
I'd want to not, because the people that have started coming in, they've kind of made it happen. So I don't want to like leave them out of this. So I'd be down for that, to say some retroactive.
So would it be fair to say then that John has an assignment to put a recommended schedule together on the 50%, some increment up to 100, come back to the council with that recommendation, and then also a date that would be effective?
It's kind of awkward though, because I mean, the businesses made the decision to come here based off of the information that they had when applying to come in and everything. So while I think it sounds awesome, they made the decision, and we're happy that they made the decision to come. But I don't know, it seems kind of,
They made the decision based upon the fact that there'd be some adjustment, I think.
I'm not aware of that. Some of
Yeah.
these that had already made
Oh.
commitment, Mobetta's, for example, they
Well,
made
remember,
a,
who's paying the impact fee? It's the developer, right?
uh-huh.
And correct me if I'm wrong, John, but the project almost died because of the quoted impact fees.
That's correct.
So are you saying like in the future?
And there was no commitment made. It was
Yeah.
just, this will be presented to the council. Remember months ago, we had kind of an initial thing, and I think that's what gave him some hope. Because I think there's a couple of releases that are in the process of being signed that are fairly substantial sales tax generators. Once again, not ours to announce who that is. That's the developer, but anyway, that's something the council can decide what they'd like to do.
How many businesses were within 2025 new?
Sales tax generators.
Yep.
So it's going to probably be Mobetta's, because their goal is to open this month, and then anybody after. Let's see, Bank of America doesn't generate sales tax.
Not America.
Mount America didn't.
So we're talking about one
It
business.
might just be the Mobetta's
Yeah.
and that building, because they have applied for their permits and paid for impact fees, for example.
Yes, Councilmember Severie.
So Councilman Dalpass, let me understand, are you trying to say that we should maybe say there's going to be a date where this will occur?
No,
In order to protect
I'm
what's
just
happening
saying, the businesses already had made I was unaware. I did not know that Mobetta's at some point was working with John or the city, and we said, hey, we're working on this thing, and that was part of their decision to come to the city. So that's a good background to know from my perspective. I wasn't necessarily aware of that. If that background discussion wasn't happening, then that would change this for me.
Yeah.
But since you say that Mobetta's had, for example, was kind of said, hey, this might be something that will be a possibility, we're working on it, then that makes more sense.
And that's why the initial discussion came up. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but the initial discussion kind of came up as like, is there interest in the council of looking at something like, no commitments were made.
Yeah.
But I think there was hope. And after the council kind of said, this makes sense, we want to be competitive, I think that's kind of,
Yeah.
Councilmember Pulver, I think you had your hand up first.
To be perfectly honest, I think we need to be, I don't want to say more aggressive. This is, it's not a war that we can lose. And I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs here on certain things, but I think overall, this is a war that we can't lose. If we start, pitter patting around on some of these things, businesses could just walk across the street. Pleasant View, they got a whole bunch of stuff that's going up. I don't want to lose that. I want to keep the momentum going. And if this does that with the developer, then so be it. I mean, I don't, this, when you say, oh, well, you're giving so much to the businesses and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is the only thing that's going to reduce the property tax obligation to the citizens. Because if you don't start increasing commercial, which is 100% of the taxable value, and generating more sales tax, you're going to be, people are like, why are we getting another 10% property tax increase? That's because we don't have enough commercial. So we need to be more aggressive on this. I don't know. I think this is pretty good, but sorry, I'm going on.
I don't want it to look like I'm trying to stop any momentum that's happened, because that's not at all. Because those businesses, from my perspective, were committed. They're almost all the way built. They're opening soon. And so it appears that they've made the business decision to come here. And so with what Mayor Berube has explained to me, I understand that now, but there's no one stopping momentum here.
And there was no, once again, I want to clarify, there was no commitment made on
Yeah.
behalf of the council. It was, the council is very interested in generating businesses in the city. We understand we're not competitive with our impact fees. The council has, expressed the need for commercial businesses, so there's a probability that's probably greater than 50%, but no commitments were made. Just want to.
Is this going to be fast enough for John? Because I guess the concern would be that the developer comes to us this week and they say, hey, we need to move on ABC company that's interested in coming. And I know we're in the middle of putting the ordinance together, but are you worried about that?
So can we approve it tonight?
So I think the council could, because you can take any action you want tonight. And I think you could, without passing a resolution, say, hey, here's the principles we like. We like the incentive. We like the discussion, of more than 20%, because originally we talked about last week, it was 20%. And that we want this to apply to all these new businesses. And I think that would give them some confidence, understanding that, granted, it's a new council next meeting. But at least that they'd have it would give them some warmth in their hearts that it's likely it would be approved, and they could then finalize some of these leases that they've been negotiating for the past.
What are we still waiting on? I mean, why can't we approve it right now?
If you want to do a sliding scale that talks about, if let's say someone generate
Right.
50,000 versus 100,000, do you want to provide them with a higher percentage of that money?
Well, I mean, I think that was the idea of having the up to 50%. So I think that we could trust staff on that, on those parameters, if we have the up to wording in there.
Well, it would have to be up to 100%, because the sliding scale that we were referring to is if a Costco, and just like John always says, Costco is not coming to North Ogden. That they haven't come to us. But that's a nod to John. But if a Costco comes, in theory, to North Ogden, they're the type of company that we would have to offer that 100% impact fee offer. So the ordinance tonight, if we want to make sure we don't miss anything, it would be that up to 100%. John goes back and he gets all the wording right for those scales that we're talking about. And then at a meeting in the future, in the near future, hopefully like January, February type of thing, he comes back with an amended ordinance that we vote on and say, here are the categories. But if we say up to 100%, in my perspective, it gives us assurances in case something big comes. And I know that the chances are probably pretty low that some massive company comes within that time frame, but I don't want to take that chance.
There is a lease being negotiated currently
Yeah.
on a major
Right.
tenant.
Costco?
Well, you could call it the Costco law if you want, but Costco ain't coming.
I would be in favor of changing it back to the 100%, approving it tonight, and then at a later meeting, specifying the sliding rule, because then if it were active tonight, then we could give that and not lose any opportunities.
I think the other thing is the definition of documentation they have to present. But John could probably insert that relatively quickly. But I think it would be important to say that, yeah, it's up to, but there will be a sliding scale implemented by the
So,
council.
so John could have that verbal discussion with someone that says, it reads as up to right now, but there is an intention that we're going to have a scale very soon for you.
Right.
And one thing that I forgot to mention, and this again comes on this, there's going to be full transparency in this process when it's ready to come to the council. So it will come in the form of the council as an agreement. So the public will have a chance to see it, understand it better, maybe not the nuanced data from the state about other locations, but it'll be an agreement that comes to the council so that it's not just a deal being made outside of this chamber.
Well, if anyone else is on board, I'm happy to try to make a motion to make it pass tonight. Or am I the only one that feels that way?
He would need to put the documentation in there, I think, at this point in time, because otherwise the has to be in front of the council before they can approve it.
So yeah, so I've added these two provisions so that the city shall inspect projections and provide a report. So that's the city staff. I'll put staff here actually, to the council, and then payments for impact fees shall not be made until the city has verified information based on state sales tax reports.
Yeah, I would prefer to see up there, John, the fact that it says they're required to provide their last 12 month sales tax reports. Because when you're looking at, inspect projections, because projections aren't going to matter, right? Because we're paying this after and it could be paid on a quarterly basis. I don't think we have to get into that detail. But it would seem like the council in protecting their fiduciary duty would want actual documentation.
And that's a really good point, because what with D and E, one is what are the numbers we're expecting to see? Because I think the council needs to see that. That's what's shown in D. And then E is what before the payments are actually made or those reimbursements, we will get hard data that we can compare to see the difference and decide what that number, or that the math will tell us what that number is.
Shouldn't D maybe not say projections? Because you're looking at past, isn't it? You're looking for 12 months of
Right,
past
12
data
months.
at a comparable location.
That was the point, yeah. Because it's not projections. What they have to provide is their last 12 months of sales tax submissions to the state. And then the current 12 months.
Which would work for a business that was going to expand. Let's say Walgreens was going to double in size, because they could see this location and what it did the past 12 months in the future. But with Mo Betta's, we don't have that information. And so
But you could advance theirs, John. They file what, quarterly or monthly after they hit a certain threshold. On new businesses, because that's kind of what's important to the developer, right? because they have to make this thing pencil out. And on the new one, you could just pay them based upon their quarterly.
Right. And I think maybe I'm talking past the group here and I apologize. So E is dealing with the reimbursement. D is dealing with the information that comes at the time the council signs the agreement so that you have an idea of what may happen down the road. But E is what actually will happen when the agreement triggers it. So I just might not be saying it the right way. Because what I'm trying to say is when we go and sign that agreement under D, we're going to project what we think we're going to get. And E is before finance writes the check, then we know what we've gotten. Is that,
I think that I'm following you.
but I mean, we could just say the city staff shall provide a report on data relied upon, and I'll just say prior to signing an agreement.
And who's paying the impact fees, John?
Well, so under this structure, the developer would pay the impact fees and then the city would reimburse them
After 12 months.
after so each year they would reimburse based on the numbers for
Here's part of the
defined goals.
problem on development, right? Because the developer usually has to go finance the cost of their project, which includes
Impact fees.
impact fees. So they're including that generally in their loan.
So let's see, council, where this includes an agreement, I think that we could come back to you and maybe use Mo Betas as an example and bring an agreement with some information, and we could adopt the policy and the agreement at one of our future council meetings with the developer's help so that we can see how the policy is going to work with it. Because the point the mayor's making is, and the way this was originally written is we were going to kind of use a projection for what we thought they might do and then pay the money up front so that they don't have to roll it into their financing and then really kind of cross our fingers and hope that it would turn out okay for us. That was part of the reason to cap the incentive at 50% of the sales tax, not 50% of the impact fees, but 50% of the sales tax, so that we knew that there was at least an upside. We could be half wrong and still be no worse off. But maybe that would make the most sense, is to come back to you with an agreement. I know the developer with Mo Betas would have some interest in coming to you to ask for this. And I think we could maybe do those two together to give the council a really good feel for this is how it will look, and do you have enough information? Or do you want to tweak it and work with it a little more?
Mayor?
Councilmember Severing.
So I'm curious, John, what is your recommendation? Because initially I was kind of thinking, as I've listened to everybody, I was kind of thinking the 50%. Excuse me, because excuse me one more time. Because I always believe somebody's got to have some skin in the game. I can see the reasoning for the up to 100%. What is your recommendation?
The up to 100% of impact fees doesn't,
Mhm.
I think that's totally great, because it allows, I mean, the city still gets the money it needs to fund our improvements. I wouldn't go above the 50% on the increment. So we want to look at the number that they're generating to the city directly from that point of sale number, and they get up to half of that to go credit, because I still think the city should get a portion of that increment. A good example is if a business, generated $150,000 extra in sales tax in a year, then in theory the city's going to get $1,500 from that, and so they would be entitled to. We'd split it 750. Now most businesses, or a lot of businesses, are going to bring more than that, but the idea is that it's going to be hard for someone to get to the 100% impact fee number unless they just generate crazy sales tax. And all we're trying to do is help reduce that burden. We're not trying to eliminate it. And so I think the numbers will end up working out very favorable for all, but it's not going to be there's not going to be $1 million of impact fees being generated by a business in 1 year eligible.
John, the other thing is, and I don't know if this replaces it, but you were going to look at the transportation impact fee for those who are on state roads. So that's in addition, right?
Correct. And that,
So these impact fees are other than that. It's
Yeah.
on top of it is the council needs to address that issue on state roads.
yeah.
So does that need to be clarified when it talks about impact fees? Because you don't want to double dip, right? You don't want to say, oh, you're going to get this applied towards your impact fees. Because if they are a big generator, all of a sudden they're getting that plus. Is
Well-
there some coordination here that should be?
Well, I think
take
if
place?
it's another good reason to maybe push it back to another meeting. But the idea is they're never going to be entitled to an incentive more than the impact fees, because I don't think the state code allows for that. And so 100% is the cap. And if the council reduces the transportation impact fee by 25%, then that reimbursement goes down 25% for traffic impact fees. But that's what they would have paid either way. And so I think it's still going to be capped at that 100%. And so it might feel like they're double dipping, but in some ways they operate independently because, for example, the America First Credit Union under the impact fee plan for traffic on UDOT roads, they would qualify for that, but they wouldn't qualify for the sales tax reduction because they don't generate sales tax. So
Councilmember Severing?
One more thing, I was just thinking that I think the citizens would probably prefer a very calculated risk versus just a risk. So for me, I would rather see something that's more 50% myself, but
On the impact fees? Or
I know
elsewhere?
that's what's
Because-
on the sales tax incentives.
Sorry, can you?
You're never going to get to 100%. I
We're
mean, if
never
you
gonna
start
get
looking at
100%.
what's that?
We're not going to get to 100%.
Well, if you think about the businesses, what they'd have to generate to get to, because you're talking 0.5%, even so you take just the last couple months, you're talking 400,000 or 400,000, subtract a half, which is 200,000. That's all of the stuff that's in North Ogden. So if you just pick one business, the impact fee for one business, you're never going to get there. So, I mean, I guess the point is that it's an incentive for them to do as much as you possibly can, but you're never going to erase all of the impact
See, and
fees.
that's why I think it should be more than just the 0.5% sales tax, because they are contributing that money that goes into the pool. So if they're generating 10% of the sales tax in the city, and the pool amount is $100,000, they should get 10% of that credited to them because they're generating that money on behalf of the city.
True, but I guess my point is that,
Because 0.5% they'll never get. I mean, it's
Right.
nothing.
yeah, and I guess that's my point is that are we, I don't say giving enough, that's not the right word, but is this going to be enough an incentive, right, to do
See,
that?
that's why I'd like to see some computations, some
Yeah.
examples.
And I think Mo Bettis would be a perfect thing to say, hey, would this even be help? Because it'd be like, it's only $1,500 a month. It don't matter.
Well, 0.5% is because they're generating more than that, right?
Right, exactly.
We've been through the computation here. And if they're 10% of the sales tax generated in the city, they should get 10% of that allocation that's coming because that was their contribution to the pool. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it'd be nice to see some computations. I think the development that's being talked about now, I think they would see the assurance of the council's willingness to do this, and they're going to proceed along based upon the fact that the council is leaning heavily in that direction. I don't think it's going to detour any of the, or deter any of the potential development.
Well, there-
myself.
And there's also the RDA money that we still have in our back pocket that is something we can use. So, okay.
I would feel comfortable postponing this to a future meeting very soon, like as soon as our next meeting is, where John comes up with those numbers, the example where he works with the developer, Mobetas, shows exactly what it is, and then we move from there and approve it. And then if, just with the understanding that if some miraculous moment happens, can we have, if we absolutely need to, can we have an emergency meeting? If, John, if something comes up that is miraculous, you can call us into a meeting on, not on Christmas Day, but the day after, something like that.
When Costco calls Scott, and we will hold a special meeting.
Okay, that's kind of where I'm going.
Once again, Costco's not coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to say that like over and over. I'm in
Okay.
Syracuse, so.
So what would you like to do, council? Do you want to table this item? And give a specific meeting date? No later than the next council meeting?
Mayor, I think
What would you like
there's,
to do here? Councilmember Severing?
I think there's, I think there's every reason to table it. I don't know if we've got enough clear evidence which way to go. So I think a more concrete example would be a good thing to be seen. I think for the citizens and maybe for us as well. So
I think
That's my
that
thought.
definition of what sales tax is going to be credited is important,
uh-huh.
but an example would be good. So do you have a motion on that, Councilmember Severing? Are you making a motion? or-
I move that we table Resolution 13, 2025 on sales tax incentives used to pay impact fees until we actually have a concrete example. Do you need anything more?
I mean, I think you will see this in January or first meeting in February, based on the information we get back from Mobetas.
Do you need me to add that or?
No,
We,
Scott and I will have it back here in time.
Okay.
We'll push.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Anyone?
Second.
Have a second by Councilmember Dowpaz. Any further discussion, questions? So I think I see your hand up there, Councilmember Watson. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm fine with that. I think if you could just be really forward that we're very interested in making this happen. And not just like it's a possibility, but if you make it sound like we're willing to work with them. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All in favor of tabling item number 8 on our agenda this evening? Please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? This item then is tabled to a future meeting. All right, we'll go on to item number 9. This is ordinance 2025-24, preventing interference of official city operations. I've asked John to do this. We had a recent incident where we had a resident kind of get in a dispute with one of our snowplow drivers and attempted to step out in front of them and stop the snowplow. For the safety of the citizen, I mean, wonder if our snowplow driver had been looking in the rearview mirror to see what was going on. We just can't have that, not just with snow plowing, but remember when we had the flooding, we had problems of that nature too. So, John, do you want to go ahead and proceed with this matter?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this, as the mayor was saying, just specifically kind of says if people are interfering with the public works employees, and there is a clause in here that says that they are allowed to watch from a safe distance. So if they're there and a public works person says, hey, I need you to step over there on the sidewalk, like I need you to, we're pumping, we got a big hole in the street, I need you to back up. Then people can back up, they can record, they can do what they want. But the idea is that if they don't leave the unsafe area, or if they impede the traffic, the snowplow trucks or the other work that's happening, then it allows the police to be called. The police will do could issue a Class B misdemeanor. which is essentially the same as a parking or a moving violation, speeding ticket type thing. And depending on the severity of it, the officer would have the ability to say whether or not they need to appear in court. But as it is now, it'd essentially be a ticket for a Class B misdemeanor. And it would allow the officer to intervene, have a clear statute that the city has to rely on, as opposed to the less specific statute that's in state code that talks about impeding traffic, for example. And so you can read through those interference prohibited stuff. Oh, I should probably put it on the screen for you, for everyone in the room. But the idea is that it could be, it's really heavily focused on the physical interference with a public works or a city employee trying to perform their job. And it, in a lot of ways allows the public works employees or other employees the ability to have a good reason to bring the police in if they're not feeling like they can perform their work. Yeah, sorry.
John, what is the fine for a Class B misdemeanor?
It's
Just a refresher.
up to $250. But I think a second offense is up to 1,000. I'm seeing if Chief is going to nod in agreement with me. Okay. So it can be escalated if someone does repeat offenses. There is at least one individual in this city who the public works drivers are hyper aware when they're on their street, because they'll go out there with their snow blower and stand in the street when they hear the plow trucks coming, because they don't want snow in their apron of their driveway.
John, does this protect, I'm assuming there's already a law with police interference, but what about fire department, public safety?
Right now it just says government employee, but it says the official business of the city. So we'd have to we could clarify that to say city, or you could just say fire district. I'm trying to think of another.
Fire district, is there any others that, Chief? Step up here, will you, to the podium? State your name if you're, no, just kidding.
Hi, Council, Mayor, John, Chief Brian Iden, resident in North Ogden. It will, in our ordinances, we have a clause that defaults to all the state laws that govern police, fire, and it would just revert back to that. So if an incident like this escalates, let's say somebody stops a snowplow truck and it skids to a halt and blocks a street, and then a fire truck has to come down that street to provide a service for emergency situation, everything's going to go into the state side of things, and they're going to be charged with all kinds of violations, including arrest.
But it covers fire.
It does, well, the state
State
does.
does.
So in this particular ordinance, when I was looking at it, I don't think we need to put a clause in there that specifically says, police
Fire
department
district.
for the city of Ogden or North Ogden and the fire district for the city of North Ogden. It's all covered on the state. It would just escalate to those things if that were the incident that occurred.
And so I did just change it from city employee to governmental employee. But that in theory would apply to any employee, city, all the way up to federal. And so there's some nuances there. And then I did this is this D is the section where I essentially said it like an employee has the responsibility to say, I need you to move. Because they can't stay after they've been asked to move. So,
So just to clarify too, so if it's an incident with a snowplow truck and let's say there's no injury, but it stops the truck can't move, and then the police arrive, and then the incident escalates, we're going to move to a state charge and we're going to take him to jail, is what's going to happen. So we have that ability to do that.
If it doesn't escalate, but they've stopped it, Class B misdemeanor.
Class B misdemeanor, fine, and then we move on from there. It's up to the judgment of the officer and the circumstances and witnesses and what they tell them.
I would hope this would be something that's pretty much enforced for the safety of the citizens and our
Absolutely.
employees.
Absolutely. Because if somebody jumped in front of a police car, put their hands on it like this, or even jumped on the
They're
side of a
being
police
cuffed,
car,
right?
they'd be arrested. So we want to get as much protection as we can through the city ordinance, but that could still be true for the snowplow as well.
Mhm.
If they put somebody in danger, they put themselves in danger, and it's just unreasonable, we're going to use the state charge and take them to jail.
Perfect.
So as I read it, I feel very comfortable with this ordinance.
Okay, good. Councilmember Severing, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious, heaven forbid we should ever have another fire like we had last September, but I'll tell you what, does this also have some impact on the looky-loo kinds of people, not just somebody who's trying to impede?
So yeah,
No,
and it's that provision D that says if they're too close and they've been asked to back away, and they don't, then it would fall in that category. But it's they have to be asked first.
okay, so like when I was coming home that day of the fire, trying to get to my house, there was probably 50 cars ahead of me on Fruitland Drive, and it was really a joke at 10:50. But we can tell all these people, maybe show your license. If you're not part of the area, then you have to leave, kind of a thing.
In theory, yeah. And in an emergency situation, there are some state rules that come into play in those things. But a good example is you, even though technically you're classified as a city employee, you trying to get home isn't an official business. So them impeding you from getting home would qualify for this. It would only be if they were keeping firefighters, police officers, or in this last scenario, our public works individuals were out helping with the evacuation. So if they were keeping them from being able to perform the official duty, then they would fall in this category of an offense.
Thank you.
So is it a government employee, John? I mean, I don't want to get too far in the rabbit hole, but if somebody was ticked off at Councilmember Pulver and stepped in front, he'd probably run over him. I understand that, but would it be a city official? I mean, if they were trying to impair and stop him, is it, because he's not employed by the city?
Well, under the IRS rules, he is,
Technically, he's employed by the city.
because we give him a W-2 every year. But it's interesting because if someone was in the council meeting try to impede a council meeting from happening, then that may fall under this provision. That there'd be, it's not something I'd thought about till you said that.
And once again, I mean, we've seen pretty much they can do whatever they want at council meetings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get too far, but this is a protection for the citizens, out on the streets, basically. And the city employee. Yes, Councilmember Dalpass.
Can David maybe give us some assurances that the Public Works Department has been trained up on, if you encounter this, do this, just so it's very clear with the employees? I'm sure he has
Yeah,
gotten them up to speed, but
he's
they're
had
all,
conversations.
they're all,
with,
they all know.
how to handle it, not to get involved in a discussion with a citizen. Just ask them to get out of the way, and if they don't, then they call the police. That's the instructions, I believe. Not to engage, just ask them to get out of the way. If not, they roll up their window and they call the police department.
The crazy thing is they're pretty laid back. So to annoy enough, most of the snowplow drivers annoy them enough that they will call the police would be a historical thing.
Well, it shouldn't be any more after this last incident.
Well, true.
Should be
Barring that
an
one.
immediate call to the police department.
Because I mean, everybody's just trying
Fine
to do
them,
their job.
Class
I
B
mean,
misdemeanor.
That's
To get out of line, cuff them and take them to jail. Just a reminder of that too, council, that the current philosophy is if somebody parks on the street, they've had their warning through City of Page and et cetera. It's towed.
I've already reminded
It's
a
not
few-
a nice
yeah.
note on the windshield. They're towed. Just a reminder. Okay, well, what would you like to do here? You feel like that ordinance is okay as
Mhm.
John? Okay, then I would look for a motion in regards to
Blake, you're running out of opportunities to do this, so.
ordinance. Yeah, this could be the last one. Ordinance 2025-24, preventing interference of official city operations, as explained by Mr. Call. Do we have a motion to approve that ordinance?
Mayor, since I
Councilmember
won't be
Severin.
approving the 2026 annual meeting schedule, I will move to approve ordinance 2025-24, preventing interference of official city operations.
Okay, do we have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Council Member Dowpaz. Is there any further questions, discussion on this particular issue? All right, we'll proceed then with a roll call vote. I believe we start with Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulver,
Yes.
and Councilmember Dowpaz.
Yes.
According to my record, that passes unanimously, that motion. We'll now move on to item number 10, which I don't know, Joyce, are you handling that? We'll turn to Joyce, our Assistant City Recorder, in regards to our 2026 annual meeting schedule.
Okay, this is just the schedule that's passed every year about this time for the upcoming year's meeting schedule. And it's about the same as last year. There's the option for the RDAs, Arts Guild, Economic Development Committee, Citizen Budget Subcommittee, and General Plan Advisory Committee to meet when called upon, just to give us that flexibility of scheduling those meetings. And then the regular scheduled meetings are City Council, Planning Commission, and the Audit Committee meeting. And we're just asking for your approval on this meeting schedule.
Any questions of Joyce? All right, then I would look for a motion to approve the schedule as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Pulver. Any questions of Joyce or Mr. Call? Councilmember Pulver?
Oh, there it is. Sorry. I was getting down to the bottom where it said where it will be. So yeah.
You okay?
Yes.
All right, then I would seek a vote on this motion. It's a voice vote. All in favor of the motion regarding approval of next year's meeting schedule, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on now to item number 11, which is the council department reports. Councilmember Dowpaz, do you have anything you'd like to report on the police department?
Yes, sir. I would like to report that, okay, first of all, Chief Einan just wanted to mention that Shop with a Cop was a great success that happened on Saturday. He wanted to give a big thank you to all of the officers that were that participated, the Weber Fraternal Order of Police, the Ben Lomond Stake, and the Ben Lomond 8th Ward of the LDS Church for helping. And then also, just a reiteration that we have an officer position that is still open. So those that are in that line of work, please reach out to us if you have any interest. We have an awesome force. And then just a reminder, we're just going to beat this dead horse that winter parking is a big issue right now. Although the next 2 weeks, I saw the forecast is looking pretty lame for moisture. But just a reminder that prohibited parking, it is unlawful for the owner of any vehicle to park their vehicle or allow their vehicle to be parked on any public street or roadway in the city between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. from November 15th through March 15th of each year, except for physicians or emergency vehicles in emergency situations. It is unlawful for the owner of any vehicle to park their vehicle or allow the vehicle to be parked on any public street or road in the city during any snowstorm or within 24 hours following the cessation of snow after any snowstorm. And that is all I have to report.
Thank you, Councilmember Dalpaz. Councilmember Severing, is there anything you'd like to report this evening?
Yes, the awesome Scott Hess communicated with me today, and we have 2 positions on the Planning Commission that may be available. So all applications, which can be found on the city website, the Planning Commission page of the website, and also on the Facebook, have to be in by December 31st. So if you've ever had an interest in being part of the Planning Commission, and I had that opportunity, it's a great experience. So please submit your application.
Anything else?
That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Barker did send me his update. I will read that. Says parks overall are in a good spot. All Christmas lights are up at Barker Bicentennial and City Hall. Currently working on the restrooms, replacing the old partitions, painting walls, floors, and renovating them as best we can with the allotted budget. They'll also be sending out a post on Facebook and the city internet website, letting residents know that demolition of Mountain View Park Playground will begin this winter, of course, weather permitting. We're also working on the ramp grants that were discussed for Barker Park Playground down by the amphitheater and the Bowery, as well as the Cherry Days grant. So that's his report. I'll read that. And then we'll move on to item number 12, which is public comments. If anyone would like to comment, either online or here in person, that would be your time. I'm not seeing anyone online according to what I'm seeing here. And I don't see anyone here in person, so we'll move on to mayor, council, and staff comments. We'll start with staff. Chief, do you have anything else? Scott? Joyce? John, do you have anything else?
Yeah, just a few updates. The Barker Park Committee is moving forward on the design for that. The North Pole starts on the 20th of December. The Santa event this weekend was very successful. We had a good turnout and people had fun. It wasn't as cold as it has been in the past, so it was kind of a nice evening. And then don't forget about the city holiday party on Thursday.
Okay, thank you. Council, any further comments? Councilmember Dalpaz?
Quick question. How many applications have we had for planning commission so far? 2 applications so far. Thank you. And then comment. I just want to thank Councilman Severing and Mayor Berube for all of their service to North Ogden City. It's been an honor to work with both of them. I've learned so much from each. And I just hope that we as a council and as this group can continue some of the great things that you have taught us. And please don't be a total stranger, both of you, after you are retired from this position. Please be involved and call me if you ever have any input, especially if I'm doing anything boneheaded. Thank you.
Okay.
And
Thank you for those comments.
there are 2 planning commission seats available. Just throwing that out there.
It's nice to know. Council Member Pulver.
So I just want to give a shout out to if when you go when you go over to Barker Park to see the lights, which are awesome, you will notice something familiar. There are the street ones, the street things that were up and down Washington Boulevard are now transformed. They have taken all the incandescent off, put LED on, which I know I've been doing myself over the past years, is not easy. And anyways, they're displayed throughout the park. I thought that was awesome. That just kind of shows that, hey, we're not going to just throw something away and we revitalize it, repair it, and use it again. So I think that was awesome and good use of whatever budget we had because we're not throwing it away. So that was good. I like that. So.
All right, Councilmember Severing.
Yes, I was just going to say publicly, since it's my last time on the city council, and my last meeting. I just wanted to express appreciation to the staff. I apologize for being a very, when I first was on the city council, I felt like that I really did not know a lot. And they were very patient with me. What I've come to learn, if citizens are paying attention to me, those who are, whether they're online or here, it didn't take me long as I rotated between different assignments, police department, public, et cetera, public works, et cetera, to find out that the staff, they're committed, they're passionate, and they love North Ogden. They're doing their very best to take care of the city. So thank you for being patient and teaching me. I did want to maybe say one more thing. As I was kind of thinking today about this last evening tonight, what I could maybe recommend to the city council, and I would maybe recommend that we consider some kind of more formal xeriscape in the future on developments because of our future problems with water. But that was, I think we've survived almost being bombed during Mayor Chug's administration, right? I don't think anybody was on the council. It was just me.
Right.
And
There was a bomb threat during. the
and
council
Ryan,
meeting.
yeah. We survived COVID. We just have an awesome staff. We just have an incredible staff. So thank you for 8 great years. It was really an honor and a privilege to be able to work with you guys on the city council and with the staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing. I would just add, council, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, not only from a professional standpoint, but get to know you a little bit individually. It is a learning experience. It definitely is. A lot of things going on in the city, and I believe that, I would just add on to Councilmember Severing, the staff of this city is kind of what makes things happen. They're engaged day to day, and that's one thing I'm proud of as we depart. Our positions here is, I think, and I give a lot of credit to John on this. The city's in good hands. I think we've got the right people in the right seats, as Collins would say, on the right bus. Doesn't mean there's not room for improvement, but I just want to compliment the staff. They are very sensitive to the desire of the citizens. Just some departing information for the council to consider is, just remember as a council member, when you say something to a staff member, they take it extremely serious, almost like it's a command. And so I would ask that we continue to implement what we've worked hard on, and I think you've done a good job of, is that, please work through John to get things, if you have a concern with the department. The mayor hasn't always followed that. Chief will tell you sometimes I call and talk with him, but I always let John know that I've talked with him. So I would just encourage you to continue to use that procedure. I think it's worked well and it avoids confusion with the staff. And I told Councilmember Severing this when I became the mayor and he was on the council. This job takes courage to do the right thing at the right time. You couldn't get caught up in 22,000 different opinions, but I think you're good at doing your homework and basing things on facts because you will receive a lot of pressure and there's some tough decisions coming up. And I would just encourage you to have that as your mantra, is have courage. Obviously, listen to the citizens, but when it comes down to it, just remember you represent 22,000 residents, even though there may be 8 or 10 that show up. And so appreciate all the good work you do. And I know the city's in good hands. and it'll continue getting even better. So with that, I'd look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting is adjourned.